Let's go! Come on, give me a Go Tigers in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from, because today, this LSU community, we are going to go through your questions and answers. My mailbag was full from you great LSU Tiger football fans. But first, let me tell you about our friends at Manscaped. They are the sponsors of today's video, and I'm going to tell you how their new Lawnmower 3.0 is going to change your life. So that's coming up a little bit later. And I cannot believe it. LSU is legit in the running for the #1 overall recruit in the entire country. He just decommitted from Clemson. A little bit later, we're going to talk about him as well. But our first question comes from Coach Chill 13. He is a coach in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and he's a diehard LSU fan. How about that? Anyway, who will be the backup quarterback next year behind Myles Brennan? And everyone's talking about the new true freshmen coming in, TJ Finley and Max Johnson, and they are very talented quarterbacks. You also have Peter Parrish, who we don't really know what his status is with the LSU football program. He had some troubles in the spring with LSU, but as of right now, he is still on the roster. But I'm going with none of those guys. I believe JT Daniels will be Myles Brennan's backup next year, if, of course, the NCAA puts the immediate waiver out there for him to play. So, he is a transfer from USC. He is a former 5-star recruit. He was only behind Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence in the class of 2018. And, of course, his numbers don't look spectacular, but I actually believe this to be true, that he will come to LSU. He already has a relationship with Ed Orgeron, and let's be honest, those backups, while they will be talented players for LSU, at least one of those three will be a starter at some point, none of them have game experience. With JT Daniels, you do have 15 games of experience in a bad USC offense, so he's going to go to a better system and learn under Steve Ensminger. So, I want to throw it out to you. Who do you believe will be the LSU backup quarterback next season? Let me know in the comments after, of course, you give me a Go Tigers. Now, a lot of you are going to be like, oh, Myles is just fine. We don't need a backup. Well, you do. It's always better to have a backup with at least some game experience. Moving on to question number 2. It comes from Johnny in Birmingham. Will LSU have the #1 wide receiver core next year in the SEC? And it's a tight battle between LSU and Alabama, but the slight edge does go to the Tigers because they do have the receiver coming off arguably the greatest college football season ever in Jamar Chase, and then a very strong number 2 in Terrace Marshall. And then, of course, Alabama has Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle as their top 2 receivers. All 4 of those receivers were top 20 receivers in yards per game in the SEC. That is just crazy, considering Justin Jefferson, Henry Ruggs, and Jerry Jeudy all went in the first round of the NFL draft. So it comes down to receiver number 3, and Racey McMath is going to be an amazing third receiver in this LSU offense. And then the Tigers also have a 5-star in Trey Palmer. When it comes to Alabama's number 3 wide receiver, John Mechie and Slade Bolden, I don't think they're as good as McMath and Palmer. Now, I will have to give a shout out to Auburn. They're going to have a really good unit next year. But LSU, to me, is the #1 wide receiver core. They have a chance to be the best LSU wide receiving core next year ever. So, let me tell you about Manscaped, okay? Fellas, it's kind of a sensitive topic for a sensitive part of your body. Well, I'm going to tell you this. I started using this, and I'm not even going to pull the razor out. This is how tiny the razor actually is. And I'm telling you, the technology and the smoothness of this razor will blow your mind when you go down there, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. I got a great deal for you. Use promo code chat for 20% off this high-powered, easy-to-use, USB-charged razor, okay? Manscaped. Just go look at some of the testimonials of how this has helped people shave a sensitive part of their body. Manscaping has never been easier with Manscaped. Once again, promo code CHAT for 20% off. Now on to question number 3. It comes from Jordan in Houma, Louisiana. How about it? How do you see the LSU running backs core shaping out? Ooh, that's tough because Ed Orgeron said he views all 3 of them as starters right now. So right off the top, even though when you look at Ty Davis-Price's numbers and you could see he was a bigger part of the offense than the other 2, it is ground zero. Like, we are starting all over in this LSU backfield with Ty Davis-Price, Chris Curry, and John Emery. Now, if you are basing this off of who was the biggest recruit out of high school, it's John Emery, a former 5-star who initially committed to Georgia. So when you look at their numbers, it honestly isn't all that much difference. They all have the same amount of yards per carry. Curry has no touchdowns, but that will change. And obviously, all 3 of them have the ability to catch the football out of the backfield. And then, of course, you also have new true freshman running back Trey Bradford that they got at the last second for the class of 2021. And on top of that, we have a new running backs coach at LSU in Kev Falk. Now, he's been with the program, but not in an on-field coaching role. So I do think it's tabula rasa. I think they're going to start all over in this LSU backfield. And I'm going to give the slight edge to the elder statesman, Chris Curry, as the first string back. Then I'm going to go Ty Davis-Price, but then I'm going to go John Emery Jr. But one wild card about Emery, he had LASIK surgery to his eyes. Growing up, he was blind in one eye. So that could change things now that he can even see the field better. So I want to throw it out to you in the comments section. Who will lead LSU in rushing next season? Type T for Ty Davis-Price. Type C for Chris Curry. Type J for John Emery. I'm going to go with C, Chris Curry. Moving on to Creole Houstonian. What a name. Houston, Texas, stand up. And side note, he did throw this in his Twitter question. He is the cousin of Kev Falk. So that's pretty cool. I mean, that's a pretty cool humble brag right there. Anyway, how do you view the LSU offensive line next year? And who has game experience? So I'm going to go ahead and just throw it out there. This is how I think the LSU offensive line will line up next year. They lost 4 or 5 starters. The only starter coming back is right tackle Austin Deculus. At right guard, I have Cardell Thomas beating out Anthony Bradford, and that's going to be the closest battle on the LSU offensive line is for that role. And Cardell Thomas is the most hyped LSU offensive lineman since Lyle Collins, who was a 5-star. And he had an injury last year. He's back and better than ever this year. So I'm going to go with KT at the right guard. Chasen Hines, the former defensive lineman, lines up at center. He played in 10 games in 2019, 18 games overall. He'll be backed up by Joe Evans. Ed Ingram is the obvious starter at left guard. And then at left tackle, we have Dare Rosenthal, who has a lot of game experience. Now, before we get to one wild card in this offensive line battle, I want to tell you about Fanatics, okay? Go to chatsports.com/LSU hats, and you're going to get some crazy deals on new LSU ball caps. Now, I know we may or may not have college football start on time, but if you've ever been to Tiger Stadium during the day, the sun can get vicious, and you need a new ball cap to withstand that heat. Come on, you got to be the freshest looking person at the tailgate, right? So get you a new hat with Chat Sports. Once again, that is chatsports.com/LSU hats. Moving on, there are some new freshmen coming in. Marcus Dummerville was the only offensive tackle from the class of 2021. Marlon Martinez and Xavier Hill are both 3-star guards who I think could potentially play next year as backups. But the X factor is Liam Shanahan, who is a transfer from Harvard. Now, my diehard LSU fans remember Andrew Hatch, right? That was the last LSU transfer from Harvard. I'm looking forward to this guy. 6'5", 270 pounds. He was an all-Ivy League performer, and he did play some guard back in 2017. So LSU last year, they had a transfer offensive lineman in Damian Lewis, who ended up going third round in the draft to the Seattle Seahawks. So I am excited about Liam Shanahan. So let me know what you think of him in the comments section, and why not? Let me know what you think LSU's record is going to be next year. And of course, Liam Shanahan, that's such a great name as well. Now, for our last question, it comes from Dane in Monroe, Louisiana. Who was LSU's biggest recruiting commitment over the past week? And what is this about the number one recruit in the country? So, LSU, it is crazy how good Ed Orgeron is at recruiting. Kids can't even come to visit Baton Rouge. And Ed Orgeron is still getting commitments out of nowhere. Now, let's start with the one that was kind of obvious. Xavier Carter, a 4-star linebacker out of Atlanta, Georgia, went to the same high school as Arden Key. Most people thought this 4-star outside linebacker was eventually going to come to LSU. But he will play defensive end in Bo Pelini's system. So that was a good recent commit. But these next two guys were kind of out of left field. You have Landon Jackson, who everyone thought was going to go to Texas A&M. He ends up going to LSU. His numbers were crazy. We're talking the 4A Defensive Player of the Year in the state of Texas. Over 110 tackles, over 17 sacks. Are you kidding me? And 8 pass breakups. This guy is 6'6". Reminds me a lot of Barkevius Mingo. He's going to have to add some weight to play SEC defensive end. But what a player. A top 150 defensive end out of Texas. And this was the shocker of them all. JoJo Earl, a wide receiver, a short wide receiver out of Texas. It's unreal what he's done at Aledo. Now, Aledo is the same high school LSU got 2022 safety Brian Allen Jr., but goodness gracious, JoJo Earl is a ball player, and don't let that height fool you. He will go up, high point the football, and then he's also like Early Doucette with the ball in his hands. He'll make you miss. He'll take it to the house. He's got really cool hair. I know that's not really a thing, and he wears a helmet, but still, JoJo Earl, a big pickup. The number 72 player in the country, a top 15 overall wide receiver. But I'm going to let you know this. It's not so much that LSU got those commits. It's what potentially could happen for the Tigers. We will get to that in just a moment. The number one player in the state, in the entire country, could be coming to LSU. But first, I want you to subscribe to our channel, okay? It's not just really cool LSU stuff. It's also NFL draft coverage. We had over 1 million viewers for our NFL live stream. So subscribe to Chat Sports so you don't miss the video. Click the bell, and guess what? The comment section for every one of my videos gets crazy. So we don't want you to miss out on that community. Hit the subscribe button now. Okay, so 2 big news items, and we'll get to that number one player in just a moment. But 5-star defensive end Dylan Brooks chose Tennessee over Auburn and Alabama recently. We're talking a defensive end who was supposed to go to Alabama or Auburn. They were the 2 leaders. He goes to Tennessee, which is good for LSU because they don't play Tennessee every year on their SEC schedule. In fact, they won't play the Vols until 2023. So That's big, good news for LSU. If he doesn't go to LSU, you don't want him going to any of the other SEC West schools or Florida because that's who LSU plays every year. Now, to the big news. Korey Foreman, decommitted from Clemson. We're talking the #1 player in the country. Now, does LSU have a legit shot at getting Korey Foreman from the state of California? And the answer to that is yes, because of this one thing. He's really good friends with 5-star defensive tackle Mason Smith, who is from home in Louisiana, and he has made it clear that he and Mason want to play at the same school. So, LSU, it puts them in pole position to land Korey Foreman. Now, Clemson's still going to be in the race. He's already said that. Obviously, all the other blue chip schools are still going to be in it. But that would be crazy on top of Landon Jackson, on top of Xavier Carter, and don't forget, another 5-star in Rajon Davis. So, let's take a look at the 2021 class really quickly. Rajon Davis, JoJo Earl, Deion Smith, and Landon Jackson. You notice one thing about all 4 of those kids? None of them from the state of Louisiana. You got California, Texas, Mississippi, Texas. And then you have Xavier Carter, Dakota Mitchell, Anthony Hundley, and Peyton Todd. And of those 8 players, only Peyton Todd is from the state of Louisiana. He, of course, from West Monroe. Thank you guys so much. Thanks again to today's video sponsor, Manscaped. Just take my word for it. It will change your life. So, we're building this community at Chat Sports. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Is there a question? I wasn't able to get to all your questions today, but if you have any other questions, I will answer them in the comments section. Should LSU go after JT Daniels? Should Chris Curry be the starting running back? What do you think of the offensive line? Let me know in the comments section, and we'll talk to you soon with Chat Sports.